Your Highness, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen of the Global WISE community. As I stand in front of all of you today, I wish some very significant and dear people would be with me. My mother, Pauline, a forward-looking educator in Colombia. My godfather, in Latin America we have godfathers, who brought to Colombia the most progressive ideas in education. And Oscar, a dear colleague and the first rural teacher I met when I started my career. I owe to them, to a great extent, the inspiration and courage to engage in this lifelong journey and life project of more than 30 years, dedicated to create opportunities to give quality of education to all children. I owe to them a very, very wonderful feeling and emotions of thanking. Wherever they are in the universe, they're looking at me, and I thank them for their love, support, and especially the inspiration. I would like to tell you the story of two people. One of them is myself. I studied sociology in Colombia initially. As a sociologist, you always want to reduce inequalities and drive social change. I taught sociology of education in schools of education, that basic education was crucial. This was my conclusion, that without quality basic education, no social, economic, peace or development could ever be achieved. And you can only sustain the goals of the other sectors of health and nutrition unless you have quality basic education. I then started to work in distance education, trying to reach the most remote schools of Colombia. But I realized we were the ones that were distant from education. I realized that there was a huge gap between what teachers learned in the schools of education, at least in Colombia and some countries of Latin America, and the reality of the poorest, vulnerable, remote schools of the country. For example, teachers were receiving conferences on active participatory learning, and they were instructed that they use active methods themselves. How could they make the change if they had not practiced these methods while being trained as teachers? The challenge was finding simpler ways to express all these complex ideas that are in the academic level. It was a really desperate need to translate complexity into more simple things, and this is the only way to ignite social change. Everybody had the rhetoric, but not the concrete instruments or strategies to make it really happen. Then I had the luck and the opportunity to go to Stanford University, and I focused myself at the micro level. I wanted to see the interactions of what really happens in the classroom. And here I started to understand that the way students interact in the classroom and solve problems, their daily routines, could have a big impact on society, especially in nurturing citizenship, skills, attitudes, and peaceful behaviors. There is an intimate relationship between pedagogy and citizenship building. This is what John Dewey said 90 years ago. I realized that cultivating the soft skills of social capital is essential to produce engaged, responsible citizens. Returning from Stanford, I was committed to reduce inequality and work where there was the highest inequity in the educational system of Colombia. The poorest isolated rural schools. Most of them were multi-grade. That means where one or two teachers have to handle simultaneously several grades. But they were invisible to both educational planners, teachers' colleges, and funders. The word did not exist in the schools of education, despite that they were 60% of the rural schools in the country. At that time, Colombia, as other Latin American countries, did not offer complete primary education in rural areas, despite it was a constitutional mandate. So I decided to make these schools visible and their teachers visible and embark myself in that endeavor. That has been more than 30 years. Everything was challenging in the rural schools. High dropouts, repetition rates, no academic results, low self-esteem of children, low teacher morale, inefficient, theoretical, expensive teacher training that had no impact on renovating teaching practices, urban-biased curriculums, conventional rote memory, teacher-centered methods. And the teachers in the multi-grade schools never received support to really handle simultaneously several grades at the same time. It was like a failed business, like a failed company, no results. But it was very interesting because what we started seeing as a constraint became an opportunity. Starting from the margins, you have to handle so many problems, but this is wonderful for innovation. At this moment of the story is when I met Oscar, an outstanding, motivated, charismatic rural teacher from Norte de Santander, a region of Colombia. He was a teacher in a demonstration school supported by a UNESCO project that was applying the techniques to help teachers handle simultaneously several grades at the same time. This UNESCO project was all over the world. This was the starting point of this long journey, and we started thinking big, trying to impact the whole system. This transformative vision forced us to rethink and reinvent everything. The classroom and the curriculum intervention, the training of the teachers, the relationships with the parents and the communities and with the administrators. In other words, it forced us to think systemically from the beginning and beyond the classroom. This is the starting point of Escuela Nueva, which means new school. Later on, Oscar, this wonderful teacher, charismatic teacher, Beryl Levenger, USAID education officer that helped us finance the pilot project, and myself co-authored the first Escuela Nueva training manual, where all the underpinnings of the model are decided. But now you may be wondering, what happened to the second person of the story? This is Diego. He's 12 years old. At his school in Quindío, a state of Colombia in the coffee region, children sit and work in small groups, grouped by grade level. It is a multi-grade classroom where all grades are taught in the same room with one teacher. This was our starting point. When you enter the school, you immediately see it's quite different from a conventional school, and you instantly shift your attention towards the children and what they're doing. Some are working on their assignments, others discussing in groups. You hear the buzz and hum of work getting done and learning taking place. Each one seems to know exactly what he and she are doing and is focused. If you ask them what they're doing, they explain very eloquently and confidently. And most important, they explain to you how they are learning. They know they're learning through observation, discovery, reflection, working individually, in pairs, in teams. They receive feedback from their teacher during the process, not at the end, share their work with others, advance in their learning, and at their own pace. They finish academic units at their own pace because we had to modularize everything, the delivery of the curriculum. In this school, the teacher is really doing the right role. She's a facilitator, a guide, instead of just a transmitter of instruction and facts. This is the real new role of the teacher, a teacher that has more time to give feedback during the process, to help slow learners, to motivate. It's a different role. It's a more important role full of empathy and leadership. This is an Escuela Nueva school, a type of school where students collaborate, participate, dialogue, interact, exchange. One that fosters self-paced learning, but at the same time, cooperative learning, where learners develop social and emotional skills, now called the 21st century skills, such as learning to learn, to lead processes, to take initiatives, to plan, but especially work in teams. This is very difficult, unless you learn it in school. Children are organized in student governments, nothing new. and have committees, but they really are learning to participate and have genuine responsibilities. The student government promotes the involvement and leadership of both girls and boys in equal footing. I once asked a boy what he thought about the fact that the president of the school government was a girl. By the way, everywhere I go, I see this. And he replied, "She's great, she's much more organized," and he continued working by himself with others with no problem. So this suggests that there's a cultural change. What is innovative about all this? Well, most of you that have learned that way, I myself was exposed to this quality learning, well, this is not really new. You're familiarized with it. But this is not the case of the low-income public schools. I should say in developing countries and even in developed countries. The ideas on which we built the model are not new. They're grounded on solid educational theory. What is new is that we made this possible for thousands of low-income schools in more than 16 countries, mainly through governments and international organizations, managing to transform complexity into simple, manageable action so that any teacher, without having a PhD or a master's, could transform their learning environment, improve the classroom climate, and have results, not only in academic learning achievement, but in peaceful democratic behavior. It is simple, replicable, scalable, and cost-effective. So let's talk a little bit more about Diego. And so what's so special about Diego? Well, apart from being a boy, like so many living in poverty and exclusion, Diego suffers from epilepsy, causing him difficulties in learning. He used to attend a conventional school near his home. However, he says, at that school he was ignored by the teacher and teased and bullied by his peers. He felt rejected and left behind. So at 10, he decided he wanted to quit and not go back to school. Thanks to his supporting parents, he changed school. He now attends the Escuela Nueva San Gabriel school. This school is 2 hours in each direction from his home, a trip he does twice a week by horseback, accompanied by his mother. No matter the long distances and many obstacles of the way, Diego and his parents will do anything. So he attends the school where he, as he says, he feels welcome, happy, motivated, loved, and he feels he's learning. In an Escuela Nueva school, the school adapts to the child and not the other way around. What do we see here? Flexibility, inclusion, empathy, adaptation. So at this point, the two stories meet. Let me link this with the summit, Reinventing Education for Life. The theme of this year's Y Summit, Reinventing Education for Life, resonates well with what I and the people around me have been doing for many years. Bringing education to life means reaching the greatest number. It means making each learner a better person, having the academic and social skills to navigate through life, and bringing life into the school. Bringing education to life requires finding cost-effective ways to provide learning for all. It means learning to become independent, free-thinking citizens, lifelong learners capable of building secure and prosperous communities. And how was this possible? From the outset, the plan was to make this social innovation technically, politically, we have unions in Latin America that are very strong, politically and financially feasible so that we could impact the national policy and reach great numbers. We demonstrated that it worked and started its dissemination. One thing is to have an innovation, another thing is how to introduce it into the system. And we started bottom up in an organic manner, not by decree. From child to child, from teacher to teacher, from school to school, from community to community. The real actors of change were children, teachers, and communities themselves. If we started as a local innovation, gradually became a national policy. So the Escuela Nueva model and methodology and pedagogy today has reached more than 5 million children in more than 16 countries, mainly through governments and the support of international organizations. There have been many. and has sparked reforms as far as Vietnam and East Timor. However, leading change at large scale is not an easy task, as Julia was saying yesterday. And as Geoff Mulgan, the director of NESTA, National Academy of Scientific and Academic Achievement in the UK, writes in a recent document on social innovation, quoting Schopenhauer, "On any truth, first it's ridiculed, second it is violently opposed, and third it is accepted as being self-evident." Escuela Nueva passed through all these stages. So as I stand here today, I'm very proud to share with you that Escuela Nueva has been my professional life project, defending Escuela Nueva's pedagogy, evidencing it works and has results, ensuring its quality and sustainability over time, innovating and adapting it to urban and displaced migrant children and populations caused by armed conflict in Colombia, ensuring it has impact on national policies and keeping it there, has been my life project for more than 30 years. I have worked to develop, expand, and sustain this innovation from different organizational spheres. As the first Escuela Nueva coordinator, then vice minister, where I gave it total support in the country, then as UNICEF's regional education advisor for the Latin American region, was a wonderful platform to expand in Latin America. But now, from Fundación Escuela Nueva, Colombian NGO, I set up in 1987 to ensure the quality and sustainability of the model and to continue innovating. We have adapted it to urban, to displaced. But we have learned over all these years, you need to work with governments to have big impact and coverage. But you need public-private partnerships and the role of civil society for quality and sustainability. This was a way to continue protecting and enhancing the innovation, aware that innovations fade within bureaucracies and are very vulnerable to political and administrative changes. To finalize, I want to leave you with 5 key takeaways that derive from the experience of Escuela Nueva and their absolute relevance to this year's WISE Summit and for the future. Yes, it is possible to provide quality education for all, even in the poorest of the poorest schools. Yes, we can, and this was before Obama's campaign. More of the same is not enough. We need a shift of the learning paradigm, massively. Third, learning goes beyond just cognitive achievements. Learning involves developing and practicing civic and social, emotional skills. As you said today, learning to be, as UNESCO has been teaching us, learning to know, learning to do, and learning to live together. These are the basis for peace and democracy. Fourth, we need comprehensive and systemic thinking if we want to lead large-scale reform. Fifth, to reinvent education for life, you must prioritize pedagogical reforms, not just administrative changes. As I said yesterday, I may be the most visible of the hundreds of people who have been with me in this endeavor. But there are many others, teachers, children, parents, colleagues, and staff of national and international organizations who have joined me for over 30 years in this beautiful journey, a collective life project of all of us. Let me close by sharing with you the great emotion that having received the WISE Prize this year gives me a profound feeling of accomplishment. I want to thank you and your Highness and Excellencies and all you who have accompanied me in this wonderful summit. And I truly encourage you to find your Diego and make his education come to life, quoting Ashoka's motto, everybody can be a change maker. Thank you.